I used to think I understood life. I worked nearly 40 years in the trucking industry. Every day started the same 5 a.m. Black coffee, the newspaper, then off to drive across state lines. I wasn't one for deep thinking or philosophy. I just believed that if you worked hard, life would take care of itself. But life doesn't always ask what you think. 2 years into retirement, my wife, my partner of 38 years, suddenly passed away from a stroke. The house that used to feel warm and full became unnervingly quiet. Her slippers, her morning teacup, that old worn robe, they just sat there like they hadn't realized she was gone. At first, I kept up my old routines, early mornings, gardening, meals on time. But gradually, empty spaces started to grow. I ate less, slept more, didn't open the mail, didn't return calls, just sat on the porch in my old rocking chair, watching sparrows fly by. One day, I took a walk to the park near our house, the one we used to go to together. There was a stone bench by the lake, her favorite spot. I sat down, not expecting anything, just wanted to hear the water ripple and get away from the TV and all its noise. Then, an old Vietnamese man looked about 70 walked by, smiled gently, and sat near me. We didn't say anything for a while. Then he turned to me, his voice soft like the breeze. The heart, too, needs to learn how to flow like the water. I wasn't sure if he knew what I was feeling or if he was just speaking out loud. But that sentence, it stirred something in me. Flow? Was my heart trying to hold on to something? That night at home, I picked up a book my wife used to keep by her bedside, Living Buddha, Living Christ by Thich Nhat Hanh. I used to think she read those things just to relax. But that night, I opened a random page and read this line: "Suffering is not punishment, it is a teacher." I sat still. Could it be that this pain I was carrying was a doorway? A lesson I had never allowed myself to learn. The next day, I looked up some talks by the Vietnamese monk online. They weren't long or overly philosophical, just gentle words about breathing, presence, acceptance. I started sitting quietly for 5 minutes each morning. Didn't call it meditation. I wasn't used to that word. I just sat still. Sat to hear the ticking clock, sat to remember her laughter, sat to feel the resistance slowly soften. I realized I had never allowed myself to grieve. I had been holding myself together, like so many men of my generation, thinking I had to be strong, composed, move on. But it turns out it was that very resistance that wore me down. The pain didn't need to disappear. It just needed to be held with quiet, gentle presence. Since that day, I stopped looking for peace somewhere far away. I found it in my own breath, in my morning cup of tea, in the moments I remembered her without fighting back the tears. And that was when the real journey back to myself began, not with logic, not with advice, but with a gentle letting go, like a river flowing on. I used to think religion was something distant. I was raised Protestant, went to church on Sundays out of habit. But it wasn't until I lost my wife, faced those long, cold nights alone, that I realized what I needed wasn't answers. What I needed was to be here fully. One morning in March, I was rinsing a glass at the sink. Sunlight slanted through the window and lit up my trembling hands. I suddenly remembered a line from the book: "Be there for your hands, for the water, for this very moment." I paused. All my life, I'd lived for the next thing, the next paycheck, the retirement plan, the year-end trip, but never had I truly lived in the moment that was unfolding. So I began to breathe, just breathe. No temple bells, no lotus posture, just me on the porch, eyes closed, hands resting on my knees, listening to my breath, in, out, gently, no pressure. At first, my mind wandered all over the placed inner plans, my son in another state, old arguments. But each time, the breath brought me back, and each time I returned, no blame, no forcing, just return. I taped a little note on my bathroom mirror. Breathe and smile. It sounds simple, but those two things changed my life. When I breathe mindfully, I feel alive and not like a machine, but like a human being. When I smile, even for no reason, I feel the quiet sorrow inside me soften. One time, I sat in my backyard, watching new leaves sprout after winter. A soft breeze moved the branches, and it hit me, the deepest truths don't need words. I started seeing the Dharma not in scriptures or grand temples, but in the way I poured tea slowly, in the way I listened without interrupting, in the way I walked and felt each step on the earth. I once watched a video of a Vietnamese monk who said, "When you wash the dishes, just wash the dishes. Don't think about plans. Don't dwell on the past. Just wash and know you're washing." I laughed. I'd washed dishes my whole life and never actually washed them. I began changing small habits, drinking tea more slowly, watching the steam float like drifting clouds, remembering that man by the lake, turning off the TV 30 minutes earlier, listening instead to the wind outside, writing just a few lines each day in a journal like, "The sky is clear, I'm still breathing, I'm still here." Nothing big, but little by little, I started to feel alive again, not just in my body, but from the inside. A friend once asked me, "Are you Buddhist now?" I smiled and replied, "Not exactly. I'm just learning to slow down and love life a little more." The Dharma, or any spiritual path, if it doesn't help us live more kindly and gently each day, then maybe we're just reading words, not living them. And I choose to begin with the simplest thing, this breath and that soft, easy smile. Maybe you've heard someone say, "At this age, I don't need much anymore." But is that really true? I used to think so too. After retirement, I told myself, I've got enough for home, some savings, my kids are doing okay. But deep down, something still felt missing. I realized what I needed wasn't in my bank account, or even in good health care or dream vacations. What I was missing was a sense of connection with myself, with others, with life itself. When I was younger, I worked hard to be seen. At work, I wanted to be better than my peers. At home, I wanted obedient kids. Out in the world, I wanted people to see me as a decent man. None of that was wrong, but now I see how much I lived through other people's eyes. After 65, I came to understand. People don't remember what you did. They remember how you made them feel. One day, my granddaughter, my youngest son's daughter, came to visit. She's 14, born and raised here. Blonde hair, blue eyes like her mom. But something in her gaze reminded me of her grandma, quiet depth. I was making tea when she asked, "Grandpa, do you miss Grandma every day?" I paused, nodded. Yes, I do. She sat beside me, then said gently, Mom says you're stronger than you look. I chuckled. Maybe she's right. I faced loss, sleepless nights, days I didn't want to get out of bed. But I kept going not because I was strong, but because I learned to soften. I told her, you know, sometimes strength is just learning to let go. Then I shared a story I once heard from an Asian friend. Salt is always salty, but if you pour it into a cup, it's unbearable. Pour it into a lake, and it softens. So I asked her, how do we become the lake? She smiled. Maybe by having a bigger heart? I nodded. Even a child understands. It's us adults who often forget. Now, I try to observe myself daily. When I get annoyed over small things, I ask, do I really need to hold on to this? When I feel lonely, I don't rush to call someone. I sit down and write, today I miss her, but I'm no longer afraid of missing her. At this age, letting go isn't a choice, it's a survival skill. Letting go of expectations that my kids will call every week. Letting go of wishing my body were like it was 20 years ago. Letting go of regrets over things undone. Letting go isn't giving up. It's accepting that things were once full and now they need to change. I've made friends with a group of older Vietnamese folks at the local community center. They meet weekly to share lunch and read a few Buddhist verses, though no one pronounces them perfectly. But one 85-year-old woman once said something I'll never forget. We don't meet to study religion. We meet to remember that we're still alive. So simple, so profound. I believe for anyone who's lived 6, 7 decades, there is no greater gift than a heart at ease. And that ease doesn't come from big things. It comes when you can sit down, smile to yourself, and say, I've come a long way. And today, I'm still walking slowly, but sincerely. One night, I couldn't sleep. I sat alone on the back porch, listening to dry leaves rustling under the cat's paws as it wandered by. It was winter sharp and cold. The moon wasn't full, but it was bright. And in that quiet moment, I realized something simple. Everything is still happening whether I worry or not. Life doesn't need our control to keep moving. It's like a rivulet, doesn't ask if we're ready. It just flows. And the miracle is, if we learn to flow with it, instead of resisting, we'll find life becomes so much lighter. I used to fear change. Feared growing weak, feared forgetting, feared that one day no one would remember me. But the Dharma taught me, everything is impermanent. And in that impermanence, there's a strange kind of peace. I read a line from a meditation book once. Awareness doesn't mean not feeling sad, it means knowing that you are sad. It doesn't mean no pain, it means you don't become the pain. Since then, I've allowed myself to feel grief when I miss my wife, to feel lonely when the kids and grandkids don't visit. But I don't label myself as a lonely person. I simply say, this is a cloud and it will pass. These days, I look at nature as a spiritual companion. Trees don't complain when winter arrives. The river doesn't reject rising waters. And birds, they keep singing, even if no one is listening. So do I. I choose to live like that, to live for the sake of living, not because someone is watching. I've come to see that peace doesn't come from an unchanging life. It comes from a heart that's willing to change with life. Lately, I've started doing a small thing each morning. Before I make my coffee, I place my hand on my chest and whisper, "Today, I am still breathing. Today, I will live as if this is the last gift I'm given." It might sound heavy, but really it helps me appreciate each minute. Each breath in, each breath out, each cup of tea, Beatzung, each sliver of sunlight slipping across the porch. I have an old friend, Walter, who lives nearby. He had prostate cancer, went through nearly 2 years of treatment. One day, we were eating sandwiches in the park, and he said, "Bob, you know what I've learned? Peace doesn't come when you beat the cancer. It comes when you're not afraid of it anymore." I thought about that a lot. We, especially when we're older, often think we must conquer something to find peace. But sometimes, peace comes when we stop fighting. The Dharma isn't about avoiding suffering. It's about sitting quietly with suffering and still seeing the light inside it. Mindfulness doesn't mean feeling great every day. It means knowing where you are, what you're feeling, and welcoming it with tenderness. I used to think enlightenment was something far away, like monks on high mountain. But now, I believe it's in the way we eat dinner slowly, the way we speak kindly to the delivery driver, the way we forgive ourselves for an imperfect past. And as time moves on, and my breath grows slower, I no longer feel afraid, because I've learned how to live truly, live with awareness. No longer wasting days in confusion, no longer demanding that life match my expectations. I've learned that peace means no longer needing to become anyone else, that I am already enough. If you, the one listening to these words, are standing at a crossroads, wondering, is there something I've yet to truly live? Then all I can say is, peace is already here, inside you. There's no need to search. Just stop and see it's always been there. Breathe and smile. Life may not be perfect, but we can live with all that it brings, with the gentlest awareness